Basic pants is the topic of today's video, and they are quite straightforward in drafting as they are in sewing. You will need just a couple of measurements, and I know that a lot of you are really scared of even touching the subject of drafting your own pants. So if you are, please don't be, and join me in this tutorial. I will guide you step by step of the method that I use in order to draft these really nice but basic pants. And although they are basic, you can use them for creating really nice jammies, sports pants, beautiful linen pants for summertime. You can use them for both fabric with stretch and fabric with no stretch. So definitely very versatile, quite a lot of possibilities. So join me in this tutorial, because if I can do it, then you can do it as well. So let's get started. To get started on drafting, you will need some sort of paper. I'm using medical tracing paper. I have a link for it in the info box below, but you can use old newspapers, the other side of the wrapping paper. You can use printer sheets that you tape together. Get creative, use whatever you have available. You'll need a ruler, you'll need some sort of pencils or markers, but do choose something with a fine tip. You will need some scissors, and of course you will need measuring tape to measure yourself. To get started, we only need 3 measurements, and we're going to start by drafting a rectangle like the one that you just saw on your screen. And for that, before anything else, we need to mark our waist. So grab an elastic or a string of yarn or cord or whatever else you have, and tie it around your waist. Usually that's right where your belly button is at, maybe a little bit lower, maybe a little bit higher. I like to determine my waist like this. When you bend your elbows, right over here. Now, even if you like your pants to be a little bit lower, you don't like to wear them on your waist, that's fine. We will talk about it later. However, majority of the pants are being drafted from waist down to begin with, and then you can alter the positioning of your pants, whether you want them to be lower or higher. So you mark your waist, and then we need to determine the length of our pant. So go ahead and grab your measuring tape, place it on a side right over here at your waist, and on the side seam you're going to drop it all the way down. Now it's easier if you do that in front of the mirror. However, you can always step on this measuring tape, and then you can kind of see how long your pant is going to be from waist to the floor. Now I have my real size pants pattern right over here, so we will be working with a real size material. However, for this little tiny bit, let's go ahead and do that in a smaller form, so that way you can see the whole rectangle and how it will come together, because pants are really long, so it's hard to fit them on camera. So this first measurement is going to be from waist all the way to the floor, and that's how it's going to look like on your pattern. So you're going to make a line like this. This is waist, and this is floor. Second measurement that we need, which is going to be the width of our rectangle, is going to be the circumference of our hips. So we need to measure the fullest part of our hips. Go ahead and take your measuring tape, and parallel to the floor, you want to measure your hip circumference like so. You place it on the widest part of your hips, and then you measure it like that. Here I want to mention that, of course, for the purpose of this video, I am measuring on top of my existing clothes because I can't do otherwise. But you will be measuring on top of your undergarments, because if you do measure on top of your existing clothes, you're not going to get an accurate measurement that you need. So for you, just for visual purposes, I'm measuring as is, but for my pattern draft, of course, I'm using my real measurements that I measure on top of undergarments only. So for the width of your rectangle, we're going to be using 1/4 of your full hip circumference. So whatever you just measured, go ahead and divide that by 4, and we're going to be using that right over here. But we need to add some ease to it. Wearable ease is there to be added to these measurements, so that way we can feel comfortable in our garments and we can move in them freely without feeling restricted. Now these are not tight pants by design, therefore what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 1/2 inch to my 1/4 hip circumference measurement. So you measured your hips, you divided by 4, now add 1/2 inch to it right over here. Now we have two sides of the rectangle. Let's go ahead and complete it all. And the last measurement that we're going to need at this particular stage is your body rise measurement. Now you're going to measure it by sitting down on a flat surface like a chair or a stool or a table in my case, so that way you can see a little bit better. You will hold your back quite straight. You will make sure that your elastic is positioned at your waist. And then you're going to take a measuring tape or a ruler like this, and you will place that on the flat surface like so, and you want to measure it up until where it crosses your elastic, and that is the measurement that you're going to be using for our pattern draft. Alright, now that we know your body rise measurement, we need to reflect that on our pattern. So remember, all measurements start at the waist, so whatever was your body rise measurement, let's say 10 inches, go ahead and measure 10 inches from waist all the way down. Once you have it, mark it, and then go ahead and draft a line across like this. So this is going to be your crotch line. If you want, for a personal reference, just to make it a little bit easier in the future when you're going to be making some other pants design, you can mark your hip line as well. In this case, you can do it two ways. You can either measure from waist down where your hips are at and then reflect that on this pattern, or you can take the distance between waist and crotch and divide it in 3, and 1/3 right over here is going to be your hip line. Now we have waist, hips, crotch, and floor. And the last thing that we need to find is the knee. Now the approximate position of the knee is between the crotch line and the floor. So go ahead and divide this line from crotch to floor in half. So go ahead and measure that on your pattern piece, divide it in half. So now this is going to be your knee line, your approximate knee line. Because in reality, it might be a little bit higher, it might be a little bit lower. But to make it real easy, you can just go ahead and divide this in half. However, if you want more precision, you can take your measuring tape and measure from waist down all the way to knee, and then mark that measurement on your pattern. Now this beginning stage of our pattern draft is going to look the same for the front and for the back pattern piece as well. And we're going to start with the back pattern piece first. Alright, so this is the base of the draft that I was doing for you guys on the smaller scale, and this is how it looks when I actually did draft this out with my measurements. So you see, this is waist, these are hips, and this is the crotch. And we're going to be working with the top of the back pattern first. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to take the measurement from waist to your crotch, so body rise measurement, and we're going to divide it in half. So let's take a look. For me, that's 11 inches divided in half is going to be 5.5. So right over here. Then we're going to take this measurement, which was 1/4 of your hip circumference plus 1/2 inch, and we're going to divide it in half as well. But this time we're going to take that half and we're going to draft it right over here as an extension of this line. So let's take a look. For me, that was 10 inches. Half is going to be 5 inches. So I'm drafting 5 inches right over here. Now from this corner, go ahead, take 1/2 inch to the right, like so, and then 1/2 inch up, like so. Now in this corner right over here, let's go ahead and build 1 by 1 inch square box. This is going to help us out with this next step. So here's a little box, 1 inch by 1 inch. Now at the 45-degree angle, go ahead and take 2 inches. So 45-degree angle is going to be going from this corner to this corner on a diagonal. So that is going to be 2 inches right over here. Now to create the crotch curve, what we need to do is we need to connect this point, this point, this point, and this point with a nice and curved line. If you want, first you can connect these with a straight line just to give yourself a little bit of a guidance how this is going to look like, and then you can curve it in. Now let me outline the final version in red so that way you can see a little bit better. There we go. Now from this point, go ahead and take a straight line all the way over here. Can you imagine? We're almost done. So now what we need to do is we need to find the middle of our pant leg. For that, take this measurement, this distance from here to here, and divide it in half. So I know that this was 5 inches, this was 10 inches, divided in half is going to be 7.5 inches. So 7.5 inches is going to be right over here. And from here, I want to take a straight perpendicular line up and straight perpendicular line all the way down to the bottom of my pants. For your knee, you want to measure it in a slightly bent position like this one. And remember that these pants that we're drafting right now are not a tight-fitting pant to begin with by design. Therefore, when you're going to be measuring your knee, so for example, my knee right now measures about 15 inches, and that is tight. That is the exact measurement right around my knee. So I don't want that. I want to make sure that you can actually move in them. So let's say 18 inches, right? So that's 3 inches of ease, and you can see that you can move in this measurement around my knee quite easily. So definitely add, I would say, at least 3 to 4 inches of ease. Remember, you can always make them more narrow, but not the other way around. So as you have gathered, right now we're going to be talking about the knee, and this is right over here. As my final decision, I settled on 19 inches on my full knee circumference for a finished pant. So 19 inches all around. Now what we need to do is we need to divide this measurement between the front and the back pant legs of our pattern. Now you can divide it evenly, however, it is always better if the back pattern piece is a little bit wider in the knees than the front pattern piece. So what we're going to do is, instead of dividing 19 in half, we're going to divide it in such manner where one side is going to be 1 inch wider than the other. In my case, it's going to be 10 inches plus 9 inches. So 10 is going to go to the back, 9 inches is going to go to the front. And as you can see, the front is going to be 1 inch smaller than the back. Now, since we're drafting back, I'm taking my 10 inches right over here, and this is the middle that we marked for our back pant leg. Therefore, I need to take those 10 inches and distribute evenly on each side of this line. So I will have 5 inches going this way and 5 inches going this way. One side and another side of my knee. I'm going to repeat exactly the same steps for the bottom of the pant as well, since I'm not changing that measurement for the bottom of my pant leg. But of course, if you want to, you can. However, for right now, we're going to leave it the same. So we have 5 and 5, and that is my case. Of course, you're going to be using your own measurements. All right, so this is the knee, and this is the floor. All right, so now what we need to do is we need to connect this and this and this and this with a straight line. Now this is the crotch line, this is the knee, and we need to connect these sides with straight lines as well, but first we're going to do that with a pencil. Go ahead, take this line and divide in half. And from this point, take 1/4 inch towards the inside of the pant leg. Now we need to curve in this line according to this new little point that we made. Like so. Let me outline that in black so that way you can see a little bit better. And there it is. And on this side, we're going to do exactly the same, but instead of curving it towards the inside, we're going to curve it towards the outside. So go ahead, divide it in half. Now take 1/4 inch to the outside of the pant leg. And again, let's go ahead and connect these new points and curve this line outwards. As we complete this side seam, we need to make sure that all of these little points are really nice and smooth, because we want to make sure that this sits really well on our body. Therefore, anything that has any angles, we need to smooth out. So for example, right over here, we need to smooth it out a little bit. And in this area, if you feel that there's a drastic difference between this line and this line, go ahead and make it nice and smooth. And if you need to take in here, maybe 1/4 inch, maybe 1/8 of an inch, absolutely go ahead and do that. If you need to take it outwards a little bit, you can also do that. Just remember that it's going to add width to your hip area. And just like that, the pattern for the back pant leg is ready. And here I'm going to make one little correction for myself personally. I know that I always need to take this point a little bit higher up, just because I have a little bit of extra volume in my back. Therefore, I'm going to take another 1/2 inch up. And I know this because I've done pants, and this is always one area where I do need to adjust this measurement. You, of course, will make your own test garment, and that will allow you to determine whether you need to change anything on your pant pattern or not. There we go. Just a quick reminder, if you are a member of the channel, which is a paid function, then you do have instructional sheets available on how to draft this garment and many others as a special perk for being a member. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. So definitely check out your perks. If you're not a member yet, but you're wondering what it is all about and how to join, then I will leave all necessary information in the info box below underneath this video. For the front pattern piece, everything is going to be 10 times simpler and 10 times faster. We're going to start with the same base as for the back pattern piece, and we're going to make a couple of minor adjustments, so we're going to go a little bit faster this time. So let's get started. So first, just like for the back pattern piece, we're going to take this measurement from waist to crotch and divide it in half. Like so. Then we're going to take this measurement right over here, and instead of taking half as we did for the back pattern piece, we're going to take 1/4 of it and extend it right over here. Here's 1 inch by 1 inch box like we did for the back pattern piece, but instead of taking 2 inches, we're going to take 1.5 inches. And then we're going to take 1/2 inch down the top of the pattern. Now we're going to connect this point with this point. And now to create a crotch curve, we need to connect this point, this point, this point, and this point. There we go. Now to find the middle of the front pant leg, we need to take this measurement right over here, just like we did on the back pattern piece, and find the middle of it. Here it is. Then take a straight perpendicular line up and the same down. Now for the back pattern piece, for the knee, I took 10 inches. For the front, as we discussed, it needs to be about 1 inch smaller. Therefore, I'm taking 9 inches, and since this is the middle, I need to evenly distribute 9 inches on one side and on the other side. So in my case, it's going to be 4.5 inches on each side. And we're going to repeat exactly the same on the bottom of the pants. Now we need to connect these points with straight lines. Now we need to connect these points and these points with straight lines as well, but with a pencil, just like we did for the back pattern piece. Again, we're going to find middles of each one of these new lines, and we're going to take 1/4 inch here towards the inside of the pant leg and 1/4 inch here towards the outside of the pant leg. And just like we did for the back pattern piece, we're going to curve in these lines. And your front pattern piece for your pants is ready as well. Alright, the patterns are ready, so let's go ahead and mark them. This is back, this is front. You always know which one is back because the crotch area is longer. And then we're going to cut 2 of each mirrored. This is center back, this is center front. If you're using knit fabric, go ahead and make sure that you mark the direction of the greatest stretch. Your grain line is going to be along this line, which indicates the center of the front and the center of the back pant leg. And then you take your front pattern piece and you lay it on top of your back pattern piece and you align them at the side seams and you make sure that the side seams are of equal length and they match, and you're going to do exactly the same for the inner leg seam as well. Now here you might see that the inner leg seam for the back pattern piece is about, let's say, 1/8 of an inch longer than for the front pattern piece. Now here you have 2 options. Option number 1 is you can ease your front piece into the back piece by stretching it a little bit as you sew. If that's about 1/8 of an inch, that's no big deal and you can totally do that. Option number 2 is you can lower this crotch line right over here by 1/8 of an inch and then redraw the curve like so, and cut off the rest that you don't need anymore. Of course, before you do that, make sure that you do measure the inner leg seam and you compare them and make sure that they're of equal lengths, and then you can do either option number 1 or option number 2 depending on how big is the difference between front and back. And then you take your pattern pieces and you lay them side seam to side seam like so, and we want to make sure that right over here everything is nice and smooth and you don't have any rough bumps or anything else like that, which is perfect. Now I have already cut my pattern pieces, as you can see. Now my preference is that I don't add seam allowances to my paper pattern as I cut it, but I always add my seam allowances as I cut my fabric. Now that is just my personal preference. Therefore, if you like your seam allowances visible on the pattern, you need to make sure that you add them before you cut your paper pattern out. Now, if you're not familiar what seam allowances are, which seam allowances to choose, and how to go about it, then we already discussed this topic on the channel, and I will leave full informational video for you guys in the info box below, so that way you can go and check it out. And that's it, my dear sewing friends. The pattern draft for our pants is done and dusted. Now in the next video, we're going to be assembling these pants right over here, which is the exact copy of what we just drafted, for the exception of 2 things. I did add pockets, and I will show you how to do that. And also I did lower the waistline by about 2 inches because I also added the actual waistband on top of that. So I didn't want them to hike up till here, obviously. Therefore, I lowered the waistline and I added the waistband. But we're going to be talking about this in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Happy drafting. Don't be scared. Remember, you can totally do it. Subscribe so you don't miss it. I'll see you soon. Bye.